Hello, everybody. I'm Dawn Harris with Revelation Gardens and bringing you our weekly Pause podcast. We have special guest today, Kelly Yearwood, and she is a KPA-CTP certified training partner, and she'll talk more about that. And she's going to be discussing behavior in dogs, difficult behaviors in dogs, and how to address them. Before I get started, though, I'd like to share our founding scripture. It's Revelation 21:4, and it says, "He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There'll be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." And we founded Revelation Gardens on that to help bring security and safety to animals in need. And we are primarily a sanctuary located in Benton County, Tennessee. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. Thank you, Kelly, for joining us today. I'm very excited to hear about your background and have you share some of your knowledge with us, and perhaps leave us with some tips about some things that pet parents can do in specific situations. Great. So go ahead and just tell us a little bit about your background, maybe what got you started in this, and we'll just get started with that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you for having me. I love your mission and what you do, and I love that your animals have a place to call home for their entire lives. I think that's extremely important. I've been in the rescue community a long time as well, so that's part of the reason I got into dog training. I've been training since 1999, and I am what is considered a crossover trainer. So originally, the training model for most dog trainers is a compulsion or punishment-based training, meaning that you ask a dog to do something and they don't do it, and they receive a correction for that. I studied for many years under what was considered master trainers of the time, and those were trainers that worked with police dogs and military dogs, and both for narcotics and apprehension, and service dogs as well. And even in the service dog community, that's how dogs were trained back in those days. I was working under a trainer at one point, and we had a dog that was, I guess you would say, being difficult. And this trainer began correcting this dog repeatedly. And what I was seeing in that dog was confusion and fear. And he was raising his paws up over the leash to try and prevent that correction from happening. And at that point in time, I was like, you need to stop. You know, obviously this dog isn't learning a thing from this. All he's wanting to do, he can't even concentrate on anything but escaping that punishment, escaping, that fear. So I knew right then and there that this was not the training model for me, and that I needed to find something that was more in line with my belief system.
Right.
So a few months later, I went to a seminar by Ken Ramirez. And Ken Ramirez is, I believe he's the deputy CEO of the Karen Pryor Academy, and he's also the lead training officer of the Karen Pryor Academy. Prior to him taking over the Karen Pryor Academy, he was the head trainer of the Chicago Shed Aquarium. And his seminar was unbelievable. We watched them train sea lion, 600-pound sea lions and dolphins and beluga whales and giraffes and rhinoceroses and lions, and everything force-free. Absolutely force-free, because you're not going to put a prong collar or shock collar on a wild animal. The fallout from that is going to be horrendous. And he was still at the Shed Aquarium when the powers that be at the Shed said, "I want you to take I believe it was 7 dogs, don't quote me on this, but 7 dogs from Chicago's Animal Care and Control, which is in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. They see a lot of pit bulls, they see a lot of fighting dogs, they see a lot of dogs with issues. And what they wanted him to do was to take these 7 dogs and train them to be with each other and perform with each other in a show at the shed using only positive reinforcement. So they wanted to see, can we take the aggression out of these dogs to the point where they can live with other dogs using only positive reinforcement.
I'm going to pause you for a second and maybe just
Sure.
explain what positive reinforcement is.
Sure. Positive reinforcement is asking a dog to do a cue, and that when that dog completes that cue, we go ahead and we reinforce it with a treat. Usually we use food in the beginning because most animals, most dogs are food motivated.
Sure.
Not all, but most are. And we reinforce that behavior with food because if we continue to positively reinforce that behavior, it's more likely to occur.
And that is compared to negative, which would be if they don't complete the task, then they are punished.
Right.
So punishment as opposed to a reward.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's in the training quadrants. That could, if you add punishment, that's considered positive punishment and positive
I remember that from
reinforcement.
psychology,
Yes,
but
right,
I just
right.
wanted to
We're not going to get into
clarify for
right,
viewers,
exactly
just
all
so it
that.
was a little clear. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, and you say, well, how do you get a dog to sit then when they don't know a sit? A lot of that would be either you start capturing behavior and positively reinforcing that behavior as it's captured, or you can lure them in position with the food. But the positive reinforcement can be so many other things besides food. It can be a toy,
Praise.
it can be praise, it can be a pet on the head. We often just use food in the beginning to teach it because it's a way to get things done quickly.
Sure, sure.
So after that seminar, I was completely sold on this is the way I want to do things going forward. And I went back to school with the Karen Pryor Academy and obtained my certification for dog training through their organization, which I'm ecstatic that I did.
And this is a national or regional certification?
This is actually they have students all over the world actually. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Because they have their educators are all over the world too.
And then you have to do like continuing education, that sort of thing, to keep abreast of things. But the core principles stay the same. It's just maybe new things that are, techniques or what have you.
Yes.
That sort of thing.
Yes. I mean, the great thing is, it's a science-based, training module, right? So, of course, there's new things coming out, new techniques coming out all the time, and there's training regular behaviors, and then there's also behavior modification, right, where we might have a dog that has some separation anxiety. So even in training, in the dog training community, you have niches and nuances, people that specialize potentially in separation anxiety, people that specialize in dog aggression, people that specialize in dogs that are fearful.
Mm-hmm.
And I say dogs because, that's primarily the animal that I work with, where I focus my training. But this past January, we had another, it's called Clicker Expo, and that's where one of our main continuing education things come into play, and they were doing it with cows and out in the field and goats. And the Karen Pryor Academy has a ranch in Washington where they have llamas and donkeys and goats and all these animals, and you can go take a class and actually work with them. So it's
What about cats?
Cats too. Absolutely. It's they're no different. The key is you find what's reinforcing to that animal.
Yeah.
And that is an individual thing. You know, I used to use for one of my pit bulls in my organization, he loves car rides. So I would use food as we're working, and then at the end of that training session, I would say, okay, in the car, let's go. And even if it was just a trip around the block, he had a ball. So that was part of his reinforcement.
I used that with one of ours. She also loves car rides. When she was a baby, I used to work in Jackson, and I used to take her to doggy daycare. And so she associates the car with really good experiences. So I don't use it formally in the way you do, but you know, that's kind of one of her rewards, is just to hang out in there or go for a ride. So,
Yeah.
Well, let's transition just a little bit. We didn't talk about you talking about this necessarily, but I wanted to share a little bit with our viewers about your organization. So I thought we could touch on that and then go into some of the specific behavioral things.
Sure. My organization is an organization called Pits for Patriots, and I'm originally from Illinois. I'm a transplant down to Tennessee here, so I've only been here 4 years. We've kind of taken a small hiatus right now to regroup and get things going, but we still have several sanctuary dogs as well, dogs that, due to either medical issues or behavioral issues, have remained with us. But originally, our plan was to train service dogs and emotional support dogs, therapy dogs, and companion dogs for veterans and first responders in need. We placed several dogs throughout the years, service and emotional support and therapy. A lot of our original dogs are gone now. They've all passed on. The original, we call them the OGs.
Yeah.
So that's hard. But down here, we're always going to be very involved with the veteran and first responder communities, because we really like putting our efforts into those that have given so much to their communities. But we will probably do more of a rescue type situation down here in Tennessee once we get reestablished.
Wonderful. And you have a website, right?
Our website is down currently.
Okay.
Yep, we need to revamp our website. I'm having issues getting my house renovated, so that Pitts is kind of on the back burner right now till I have the roof over our head established.
Well, perhaps we can all add into the video a way people can contact you if you're open to that, or
Absolutely.
it might be just in the future kind of a thing.
Sure.
So go ahead and share a little bit about the most common behavior issues dog owners face.
I think what I hear a lot of, and I'm on several training pages now on Facebook to try and, help people out here and there. But what I see a lot of, which honestly has kind of been shocking to me, is, house training. House training is a big one. Jumping. I think jumping is probably the most prevalent one. Maybe attention-seeking barking or nuisance barking, and digging is another one I hear a lot about. So I'm going to start with, if you don't mind, the jumping.
Yeah.
The first thing I say with jumping is, if you're getting a puppy, an ounce of prevention is the key. If we can manage and not, everybody thinks it's cute when they're little, and they can't reach, and, you don't want to always necessarily bend down, so you have them jump on you. And then as they get older and bigger and, start doing it to you when you're dressed up or whatever, it becomes annoying. So management is my first key, even in training. So we want to, because jumping is self-reinforcing to a dog, because usually what happens is the dog jumps, they either get a pet on the head, that's reinforcement, or they get pushed away. That's also reinforcement. Might not be positive reinforcement, but it's reinforcement nonetheless, and they're receiving basically contact from you. And attention. So what happens is that starts to become a chain behavior. They jump, then they sit, then you pet them, then they jump, then they sit, then you pet them. So it's a chain behavior. So if you can prevent the jumping from the get-go, and what I suggest that everybody does, whoops, he kind of missed the chair there.
Kitties surrounding the table, you can't see them.
So if you can keep at your doorway some dog treats or even kibble, and you come in your doorway and you do a quick scatter feed, 3, 4, 5 treats on the floor tossed away from you, what happens then is that dog's nose goes from up to down. So that dog can't physically jump if it's busy sniffing up those treats. And then as you
strategy, my goodness.
And then as you step in, you toss, as they start heading towards you, you toss one back on the floor again, back on the floor again, back on the floor again. So you keep repeating that over several weeks. And now this puppy no longer jumps when it's the simplified version, but that's how you prevent jumping. Or you put a gate up so that you can, if your entryway, you can have your dog behind the gate, you get in your entryway door, and same thing, you toss over the gate. The puppy or dog can't jump directly on you, and you're more able to control the situation there, where you can ask for a sit, reinforce that sit, not pass through that gate until that excitement level comes down. So that's what I would do for the jumping. Barking, demand barking, I would say, we again reinforce that. Again, we think it's cute when our puppies cry out or bark, and we want to give them attention. But if we continue to give that attention every time they bark, then of course that's going to create a demand barking. So I would say, not that we ever want a puppy to cry things out in a kennel. I don't think that's the same thing. But don't always give in to what the puppy wants at that particular moment. Maybe ask for something in return first. Ask for a sit or a down or something else, and then reinforce. That way there's a cue or two in between that, and it's again not a chain behavior. If your dog is barking at everything on the outside, management again is you're going to be your friend. You either put up blinds if your dog will respect those blinds, or you can put up a film on your windows so that you don't have the blinds getting in the way. That kind of obstructs what's driving them crazy, the people walking down the sidewalk. Management is your first key while you're training. You train a behavior such as, okay, you see a person outside, let's go get your toy, instead of barking at that window. Digging holes. Digging holes is a behavior that we see in a lot of dogs that maybe are put out in the yard and left unsupervised, or they're bored. Digging is a natural behavior for dogs. So, unfortunately, we take a lot of those choices away from our animals to live with us.
Right.
We have to give them an opportunity to do species appropriate behaviors. So I suggest for many people, give your dog a dig pit. Take a pool, a plastic pool, throw sand in it, throw dirt in it, throw balls in it, throw whatever you want in there so that they can have a spot outside where they can dig and do the species appropriate behavior. It's a great enrichment tool for them. It's a great outlet for energy. And make sure that your dog's getting enough physical exercise and mental stimulation. We get these real high energy breeds a lot of times, you know, these Aussies and these golden retrievers and these labs, and we expect them to be couch potatoes. Well, these are bred to work. These are German shepherds, they're huskies. They're all bred to be working dogs. So you can't get a working dog and expect them to just lay on your couch 24/7. We have to give them the enrichment, the training, and the guidance to not be destructive, because if they're not getting their basic hierarchy of needs met, they're going to be destructive. And what was the last one I said? Barking, we addressed jumping, digging, and I can't even remember the last one that I said.
Potty training.
Oh, potty training. Thank you. Potty training. Potty training, I say right from the get-go, and people that get shelter dogs too, that can be an issue, because these, depending on how long they've lived in the shelter environment, you know, not every animal gets to live like your animals here, which is amazing because they're in a house setting and they're not in cages and they're free ranging, and they get to learn what life is like. Most dogs in a shelter environment are in a 3x5 kennel area. Depending on where these shelters are located, they maybe get people to come visit once, twice a day to clean out their kennels. Some of them don't ever get out at all. That's the unfortunate for these bigger areas like Memphis and Chicago, just not having enough people to provide basic care. So these dogs, even if they were housebroken when they came in, they're probably not going to be housebroken when they come back out. So even if you're getting an adult dog, you're going to go back to the simple basics of housebreaking or potty training, which is if they eat, you take them out. Before they eat, you take them out after they eat. If you see them drink, you take them out after they drink. If they're playing, you take them out before they start playing, during their play, you know, maybe give them 15 minutes, because as soon as that excitement level gets up, they're going to start to produce urine, because they're going to start getting their whole body functions moving. Plus, if they're excited and they're playing, they're going to be running back and forth to the water bowl and drinking, and we just have to be on point to where we're ahead of it. We treat them every hour. If you have a puppy, they can hold their bladder 1 hour to the month old that they are. So if they're 1 month old, even that's probably too long for a 1 month old, but let's say a 2 month old puppy, 8 week old puppy, the max they're going to be able to hold it is 2 hours. So you want to take that puppy out every hour, sometimes every half hour, and when they wake up from a nap, first thing they got to do is go out, because if you set them down, they're going to start sniffing and they're going to have, you know, an accident. I never recommend using potty pads, because you're already teaching them to go and potty in the house. If you don't want them pottying in the house, don't train them to potty in the house.
What about if you work? And obviously, you know, puppies are going to have to be left alone sometimes when people work, and so in that case, wouldn't a pad be okay?
Yeah, I don't like to use pads simply because normally they're tearing those to shreds, right? Especially if they're unsupervised, and they're going to be eating that stuff. And then I personally worry about a blockage.
Yeah.
I would either, and when they're little, I would either leave nothing in the kennel or a more substantial blanket that's going to go ahead and absorb that urine, and then of course you're going to have a cleanup when you get home. If you use a kennel, my advice is to use kennel appropriate sizes for, you don't want to use, say your dog's going to be a 50-pound dog. You don't want to use a kennel that's the size for a 50-pound dog when you have a 12-pound puppy. You want to use something that you can make smaller.
It's so counterintuitive to me because in my mind, I would think you want a bigger kennel so they have room to potty and not have to be in it. But you're saying you use a small one to their size. Tell me about that. That's.
They don't usually like to go potty unless they absolutely have to, right? And that's where we come in. We have to make sure that they get that potty time. So if we're going to work and we have a young puppy, my suggestion is that you have somebody else come in and get this puppy out several times during the day. And otherwise be prepared to clean up messes for a while because that puppy just isn't physically able to hold it. Not only is they're not psychologically mature enough to hold it yet, and they haven't been taught, but they're physically unable to hold it. So, and a lot of people like to restrict water intake. It's very important that they have access to fresh water at all times because puppies can dehydrate even faster than bigger dogs. And that's a basic need and requirement. They should have access to clean water all the time. So they don't usually like to potty where they lay. But if you want your puppy, I don't want something so small that they can't turn around. That puppy needs to be able to stretch out and lay with its legs out widthwise comfortably. They should be able to stand comfortably, and they should be able to sit comfortably. They shouldn't have to, keep their heads lowered and down. So we want to have enough room for them to be able to relax very comfortably. But they will be, they'll try not to go in there. But like I said, physically, they're not going to be able to hold it for 8 hours while we're at work. If we work an 8-hour day, we're going to have to get somebody in there too, either a neighbor or another family member, or, one of the kids comes home from school, something that's going to interrupt that day so that puppy can get out and potty.
And so that's a scenario where they're using a kennel. Now, what if they have an area that's set aside, a garage, a bathroom, something where the puppy can have, more room, isn't contained in a kennel? Would it then be appropriate to, again, like you mentioned, a blanket, just have a blanket in a certain area, and then...
They have this new... I just saw an ad for it, and I don't remember exactly what the name of it is, but I was like, oh, that's like a brilliant idea. But it's a little area, almost like a cat litter box, but it's fake turf for a puppy to go on that. I would rather use something like that. And they're promoting it for dogs that live in apartments, puppies that, when you're 5-6 floors up and you've got a young 8-week-old puppy, you're probably not going to make it down in the elevator or the stairs all the way to the front door before this puppy has to potty. So they're putting it out on their balconies or whatever and taking the puppy out there to potty. But it would be a great alternative to a puppy pad because then at least you don't have to worry about that puppy ingesting, the plastic or the fuzz. Yeah, I worry, there's a lot of dogs that have passed away from getting into a chip bag, they suffocate. So I worry about the plastic that's behind those puppy pads, and then also the fluff can cause a blockage. So
this would certainly be its own podcast. There's so much to think of with a puppy. So just to summarize, I think maybe thinking outside the box a little bit to provide adequate, non-harmful, ingestible things for the puppy to use. Ideally, somebody to take it out often when they're young like that. And be really mindful. And maybe if you're working a lot and don't have people to help, maybe it's not a good time to get a puppy.
Exactly.
It's always important to think of lifestyle too and all of that. But really good information. Let's segue just a little bit into some other We talked about, the main behavioral things that people experience and some things to do for them. One thing that you didn't mention that I personally experienced with our special needs girl, Rocky Rose, is chewing. She chewed on everything. She chewed on the banisters, the rocking chairs, everything on our porch, and I mean everything, inside, outside. Any suggestions on that behavior?
Yeah, chewing.
Redirecting, perhaps?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Chewing, and that probably was one of the ones that I had actually written down, but didn't think of as we were talking about it. But yeah, chewing is a big thing for puppies, but it also it can last in some dogs up to a couple years old. Labs are big chewers for longer periods of time. Pit bulls, that's another thing that I hear a lot of on the pit bull training sites is my dog's chewing everything
Are they
that
known
supports.
for chewing? Pit bulls are? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they like to chew. Again, I think a lot of it comes to your more high energy breeds we see
Yeah.
it from, and that's a way to self-soothe for a dog to self-soothe. So we need to make sure that we give them adequate objects. So it is, and of course, we have to remember we're asking them to come live in our society by our rules. They don't know that they're not supposed to choose the piece of wood. There's no difference to them between a stick and a banister rail. We have to teach that to them. And so we have to have the patience to understand that, again, this is a species appropriate behavior to them. So we want to constantly get, I love these new chews. I love Nylabones. Again, I have a lot of pit bulls, so they're heavy, they're hard chewers. They go through things very quickly. The Benny bones are real good for that. I used to use raw femur bones, never any cooked bones for dogs because they can splinter. But I will tell you, after doing this for years and years, you're probably going to have dental problems down the line if your dogs are chewing on femur bones. They will crack teeth eventually as they age. So be prepared to have teeth extractions down the line. But that that is a good way to satisfy that chewing mechanism for them. But it is a constant redirection, and I will see, lots of people come on and go, well, I'm redirecting and it's just not working. It is working. It is just repetition, constant repetition. Every time they go to put something inappropriate, they're like babies. The babies put inappropriate things in their mouth for a really long time. Puppies and dogs do too. So we just have to house-proof like we would baby-proof our houses for a baby. We need to baby-proof, puppy-proof, dog-proof our houses for dogs, and continually redirect. If we're unable to redirect, if we're at work or, running an errand or going out, whatever, we want to make sure that that dog or puppy is in a safe location, whether it can't chew through an electrical cord and shock itself or kill itself, or chew through expensive furniture. So again, I would like to use either a kennel or an X pen, which is it's more of a tall playpen for dogs that you can put up and around so that they can't chew inappropriate things, or you have one certain room. Again, I would say make sure that the puppy or dog is receiving appropriate exercise, physical exercise, appropriate mental stimulation. When the weather's really crummy, like here in Tennessee, it's cold now, so people are indoors as they are in a lot of places, and you can't get your animal out for necessarily the appropriate exercise. I like to do a lot of mental stim and creating puzzles. Scent work for dogs is a great way for them to use their brain. And the more that they use that olfactory part of their brain, the more tired they're going to be. So you can do scatter feeding. I like to take and here's a cheap way, there's all sorts of puzzles you can buy online, and put their kibble in those puzzles and have them forage. But I take either paper towel rolls or toilet paper rolls. I put kibble in there, I fold the ends up, I start hiding them around the house, and they go and forage and find their kibble, then they shred. I could put it in boxes, my Amazon boxes that come. I usually don't throw out. I have a dog that when I go to work with another dog in the house, he gets very frustrated and he will start shredding things in my linens, my bed, whatever his bed, whatever he can get his teeth on. So I usually put a few kibble pieces in a box. I put the box together. I toss him the box and he shreds that box. Luckily, he does not eat the box, so it's just a big mess for me to clean up.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that they're not going to ingest those things, but that he's getting that whole shredding frustration out on something appropriate versus something inappropriate. Another thing I say is training. Training is very mentally stimulating and draining for our dogs. If we can take, and it doesn't have to be a long time, you can train for a 5-minute session several times a day if doable. If you can do 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night, you'll see that that dog will get worn out from a training session. Mental stim is huge for these guys. It's huge for cats. It's huge for every animal. That's why we see so much now with zoo animals that they place their food in more enrichment type apparatuses so that they can again honor those species specific behaviors even though they're in captivity.
Those are really great suggestions. I've been struggling with Rocky Roses, the big dog that lives in our sanctuary. And because of the weather and with my injury, I was scared to go walking on, slick areas.
Yes.
I didn't want to have several injuries kind of piled on top of the others.
Yes.
So I really like that. I try to redirect and give her things, but she's bored. She really needs that stimulation. So I'm going to take those ideas and create some little puzzles. And she loves to accidentally drop some cat food on the floor, some kibble.
Yeah.
And she was doing what you suggested, so that kind of happened organically, I guess you could say. But I like the idea of hiding treats in stuff, and she would love that. So I'm going to try those.
Some other things that might be beneficial is I take a Con toy or a licky mat.
Yeah.
Peanut butter, if they can have peanut butter, it all depends on what they can have. Yogurt.
She hates yogurt.
Oh, okay, that one will
She's
work
like, no.
for her. And even wet dog food, and you put that on there, freeze it to give it a little bit longer. And with the Kong, what's wonderful about the Kong is it has that lip, so you can kind of put stuff underneath that lip, and when they and then you can add kibble into that too, even a dog bone sticking out. A lot of people will use bone broth, not bone broth bought from the store because it's too high in sodium. It's too high in sodium for us. It's too high in sodium for them. But you can make your own bone broth. Dr. Karen Becker has a great recipe for it online. And freeze that in there. It's supposed to be very healthy for dogs too. It's used a lot of times if you have a dog that's had a lot of gastrointestinal stuff going on, and it's the bland and gets them eating again. You can make it in a crock pot, but freeze that and get it up underneath that lip, and then they really have to work their tongue in there to get that out. There's other ones now too. Topple makes one that kind of topples and wobbles while they're trying to lick it, so makes it a little bit more difficult for them to get to. Takes a little bit longer.
Good ideas. Yeah, I really like those. I'm going to try them. And we could do something similar with cats, a little bit spin off of that idea.
Yes.
But we have so many, so was a great idea.
They
Thank you.
have now licking mats. I mean,
Somebody
you can use
sent us a little
whatever.
puzzle
Yes.
that you can put kibble in and it closes. And then there's also there's a thing they can push to open it, or the whole thing can open. So there's several things that can work for that.
Yes, for sure.
I think we've covered most everything that we talked about talking about. Except for, talking about maybe a misconception that about dog training that you'd like to debunk.
Oh, the main one I would like to debunk is the alpha theory. The alpha, and the unfortunate thing is we still see a lot of it on TV. So people, of course, emulate what they see on TV. But the alpha theory came from actually a wolf conservation scientist by the name of David Meach back in the 70s. And it came from him looking at a research paper. I believe the other scientist's name was Schneckel, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But from the 40s, from 1947, where they looked at captive wolves. Basically, these wolves were plucked out of their environments from different areas. They weren't even from the same pack. They were put in a zoo type atmosphere. And of course, we know that the zoos have come a long way since 1947 in a different environment. And what they were saying was that they had an alpha pair, and the alpha pair would settle all disputes through aggression. So unfortunately, what happened in the 70s after David Meach wrote his book on the dogs is the dog training world took that and said, oh, dogs are descendants from wolves. And let's just say this right now. Behavior from wolves is way different from domestic dogs. It's not the same behavior patterns. There are some, but they are not as linked as we would like. They've been domesticated for many, many, many years. So what happened was we have trainers that come in, and there's no regulatory body on dog trainers. That's another probably issue. You have to have a license to cut hair, but you don't have to have a license to work with animals, unfortunately. And I know that there are certain training institutions that are trying to change that, but who knows what's going to happen down the line. But anyway, so these trainers come in and they tell you, well, you've got to be the pack leader. You've got to show your dog who's boss. If your dog defies you or doesn't listen or shows you any sort of defiance, alpha roll your dog, which is, pin your dog to the ground and, bite it in the neck like its mother would. Well, your dog knows that, with your hand, it would be a bite like this to the neck. Your dog knows you're not its mother. Your dog knows that you're not a dog. We can never emulate their parents. And for 40 years now, Meach has been studying the wolves in the wild. And he doesn't even like to use alpha anymore because it's gone so crazy in the dog training community. Your lead pair of wolves is more like a mom and dad family unit. It's a family unit. A pack of wolves is family, not I'm going to attack you if you go towards that resource. So I really, unfortunately, there's still so much of it on TV that many people don't want to give up that alpha mentality. You should be a good leader to your dog, absolutely, by being a good teacher. That doesn't mean that you have to, pop your dog in the in the neck to show that. It doesn't mean that you have to go through the doorway first. It doesn't mean that you have to eat first or deprive that animal of certain things in order to show them who's boss or correct them harshly. What that being a pack leader, if you want to continue to call it a pack leader, is being a good teacher and teaching them the behavior that you want to see them do. Making them understand that, hey, if you perform this behavior instead of this, you're going to get more reinforcement for doing this behavior. Our animals, when they come to live with us, they lose so much agency in their lives. You know, we supply them their food, we supply them their water, we supply them their entertainment, and we do that according to our schedules. An animal there shouldn't be that many must-haves for an animal. We can give them choices. Can you offer me a sit? Is it paramount that that dog, unless you're in obedience competition, and that can all be done, positively as well. But if that dog doesn't sit right at that particular moment, is it the end of the world? No, So we ask for a simpler behavior then, because for whatever reason, they can't perform that behavior right then and there. Is it because there's too much going on in the environment around them? Maybe. So I think if we can set up our environments and our antecedent arrangements to make sure that our dogs are successful, or our animals are successful in completing the tasks that we ask them to do, we're going to see them offer it more and more and more. So cute. But that's my debunking. Alpha theory has been debunked by the scientist himself who put it out there, and we need to, get that word out in dog training and realize that there is a easier way to do it. There's a kinder way. There's a more humane way, and why not build that relationship with your animal versus bully your animal?
Right, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important. And I appreciate you sharing everything. I really want to have you back on another podcast and share more, because there's just so much that we can unpack.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit your foot. I would love to do that. I appreciate the opportunity to come in. And
so thank you, Kelly.
Thank you for having me.
So that wraps up our weekly pause for this podcast, and thank you for joining us. I will put contact information at the end, and you can contact me if you have a specific question you'd like her to address in the future when she comes back, or if you'd like to reach out to her. And I just always like to end our podcasts with same cat time, same cat channel, but dogs rule. Thank you. Bye-bye.